Welcome to Arrested DevOps, episode 29, Hiring in a Post-DevOps World. I'm your co-host, Matt Stratton, at Matt Stratton on Twitter.
And I'm your co-host, Trevor Hess, at Trevor G. Hess on Twitter.
Arrested DevOps is brought to you by 10th Magnitude, a cloud services company that figures if you're listening to this podcast, then you are pretty cool. You can find out about joining their cloud services team at arresteddevops.com/xm.
We all know that being on call sucks, but what if there was a tool out there that allowed you to route incidents to the right team, mention specific people to ask for help, and hop in to chat with your team from easy-to-decipher incident timelines that give you full context on what's happening? That tool is VictorOps, and they're different. From setting up global on-call rotations to creating a post-mortem report, VictorOps is there with you through every step of the incident life cycle. Our real-time collaboration platform helps your team solve problems faster. Sign up for a 14-day free trial to see how we're making on-call suck less. Visit arresteddevops.com/VictorOps to sign up.
This episode is also brought to you by Datadog, a monitoring service for scaling cloud infrastructures that bridges together data from servers, databases, apps, and other tools. Datadog provides dev and ops teams with insights from their cloud environments that keep applications running smoothly. Datadog is available for a 14-day free trial at arresteddevops.com/Datadog29, and they are hiring.
If you're into that IRC thing, you can find us on Freenode and channel Arrested DevOps during the show or on Twitter at Arrested DevOps with questions for the panel.
So at DevOpsDays Ghent back in 2014, last year, comments were made, kind of jokingly, maybe seriously, that we are living in a post-DevOps world. So we want to talk about some of the challenges in hiring for DevOps-related jobs. We've got a panel on all sides of the table, from recruiting, from hiring, and also just some rabble-rousing about why you should stop looking for ninjas and rockstars. And basically that was the impetus or catalyst for this episode. My friend Josh was ranting to me about how everybody wants ninjas and rock stars, and there was a specific job posting that we were just laughing about, and we decided we needed to do an episode about it. So here we go. Let's introduce our panel. First, we have a returning guest, and I'm really glad that he's able to make it because I know he wasn't feeling well the other day. So this is our good pal Mike Fiedler. So Mike, can you give us kind of a quick intro into your role in hiring people?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm glad to be back. It's always fun to come guest with some really cool people. Mike Fiedler, I'm the Director of Technical Operations at Datadog. As Director of the team, I deal a lot with trying to find the right people to hire into our team, so that involves both dealing with recruiters, dealing with people submitting resumes, and just overall networking to try and find new recruits, as well as guiding them through the recruiting process and then ultimately working with the team to make the decision to hire people.
Awesome. And we also have Jill Jubinski of DigitalOcean. Jill, what's your role, and why am I an asshole for saying you have a background in DevOps and recruiting?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on. So I am the manager of technical recruiting over at DigitalOcean, and I am involved in all things recruiting. So from sourcing candidates and those horrible emails, cold emails that everybody hates getting from recruiters, we'll talk more about those later, to closing candidates and onboarding. I've been doing this for the DevOps recruiting thing for about 4 years now, so yeah, excited to talk more about it. And you're just an asshole in general, so.
Fantastic.
Also, because this is what happens when we read our script, the Google Notes, literally. Also, Jill is like one of the most fun people to follow on Twitter, so
yeah,
make sure to do that.
I'm at Jill Jubs, so JILLJUBS, and I can't have a lower third because Google hates me right now, so.
Yeah. If it makes you feel better, our next guest doesn't have one either. So finally, we have, like I said, the catalyst for this episode, professional rabble-rouser Josh Hertz. So Josh, where do you fit into this conversation? Besides being muted. You're still muted, Josh.
Your headset does not appear to transmit microphone sounds.
Oh, now it says you're unmuted.
Now?
Hey!
Now you make microphone sounds.
Okay, my headset has a mute button on it.
Oh. Let's do that again. So,
Headsets.
and finally, the catalyst for this episode, professional rabble-rouser and technology neophyte, Josh Hertz. So, Josh, how do you fit into this conversation?
I don't know. I drink beers with Matt whenever he's in town, and we got to talking about recruiters and some of the recruiting emails I've got and that he got and various people we know got. Also job postings about DevOps that are not being terribly accurate. But I work in Los Angeles for a company, and I'm also the system administrator for CausticSodaPodcast.com and rabble-rousing. I don't have a lower third either because Google hates me as much as it hates Joe.
Yes. So one of the questions I kind of want to throw out for the panel is, when we're trying to hire someone into this new world of the DevOps, what are some of the biggest hiring challenges that you've run into? That could be either Jill or Mike could jump in with that.
I'll start off. I think one of the biggest problems that we face today is the job description is entirely too wide and hazy because we all use words that we don't necessarily agree upon the meaning of. We all want somebody who has 20 years of experience with Docker. We want somebody who's got every DevOps tool because there's a bunch of DevOps tools out there, and we want people who are both capable at doing everything and being amazing at anything. So the skill set that we kind of need and desire is very poorly defined, and we don't necessarily convey what we really want to the people who think they have what we want. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, because you want your job postings to be attractive. You want them to show up in searches. You want them to become available. So you use, search engine optimizations. You use keywords. You use all these things. But that means you're going to get a lot of people kind of seeing the information that don't necessarily need it. So if you post for DevOps and what you're looking for is a build engineer, then you're going to have some contention with, oh, well, that's not what you kind of posted. It's I understand what you're looking for, but let's use words that we all agree on. And since this term DevOps is still something that we don't all kind of agree on, then that just makes everything a lot harder.
Yeah, I totally agree. In general, it's just a super broad set. And I mean, we know from being in the community that this word DevOps is meaningless, basically. It's just something so we have things to make fun of in general. But yeah, so I mean, and at every company, it's something different. So in some companies, they use DevOps for like support. Sometimes they use DevOps for engineers. Sometimes for developers. So being able to understand what the needs of the company are and the experiences that we actually need to do the job, and not just have all those crazy buzzwords, is really important and hard to do.
Yeah, I remember that this was something that I brought up on an earlier episode. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it was kind of my comment, and I've said this before, that I find it really amusing that no one's hiring sysadmins in Chicago anymore. They're all hiring DevOps engineers, but then you read the job description and it's like, support, 50 Windows 2000 servers and change backup tapes and assign group, and I'm like, okay, it's just a sysadmin. And again, there's nothing wrong with being just a sysadmin. I just realized that sounded shitty, but it's a sysadmin job. And this is kind of, to me, where I kind of wonder about like the cycle of it, right? Is it the thing of that from a sourcing perspective? Is it that, well, no one's going to want to look for a sysadmin job? Like, people are going to want like a title that's cool and awesome, so we better say that's what we do. At the same time, you've got people saying, well, I want to say that's what I do, so I want to go get that job. And then the thing, though, is everybody ends up disappointed. right? You know, because you're not doing that type of work. And I made the joke, and I think I did talk about this on an episode once where I, you know, ended up talking to, or I got a cold call recruiter for a DevOps engineer job, and ended up talking to her for like 25 minutes when I was in cab about why the job posting was bad. And not like a rant. I mean, it wasn't a like yelling, screaming rant. It was kind of a, let me tell you, in my opinion, why this is a problem. You know, and she explained in her position, because it was contract or whatever, she's like, hey, I have no control over what my client wants to call this thing. And I was like, that's cool. But what you can do is you can show the proper, you know, if you're talking to a candidate who's going to do the kind of stuff that you want, when you just like very quickly describe what the work is. Because also that's the thing, like I see a lot of these posts, they're like, all I hear is we're hiring someone to lead our DevOps team. I get a lot of those, you know, or we're looking for a senior DevOps engineer. And they don't tell me what the job is. And I'm okay with like calling it whatever you want. I guess I'm over that rant. I'm over the, you know, bucket, I don't care what you call it, but describe it. And again, like to Mike's point, if what you really want is a build engineer, and for whatever reason you want to call that a senior DevOps engineer within your organization, awesome, but make sure that like right away that like job descriptions need to be like really specific, I feel like. Not like help us transform our organization using critical processes and synergies and whatever, and be like, no, we use Jenkins. You know, so I know what, you know, just, I don't know. That's...
Yeah. So, I mean, I think part of the problem is that at some point in, I don't know, the past 10 years, the job title of system administrator became a dirty badge. You know, nobody, like you said, nobody's hiring systems administrators anymore because, A, you can't go to school to become a systems administrator. I mean, there's like 2 courses in 2 universities, and like there's very limited resources to train for this kind of job. Most of the experience you get is on-the-job training, and you know, you kind of have to fall into this kind of role. But at some point, I think there was a mind shift as more and more companies became internet-focused or internet-connected, where they needed people with an operational mindset to sustain a company. And up until that point, the only people you had who knew how to run servers were systems administrators, and they were busy running the mail servers and the web servers for the corporate side of the company, and they hated everybody because running a mail server is usually not very much fun. So the system administrator badge became something that nobody wanted to carry anymore because it's not a sexy job title. So then, you know, oh wait, there's this other term we can apply. It's DevOps. Oh, we can be a DevOps, and then, you know, we can be this other thing. We can be, oh wait, not only can we be a DevOps, we can be a DevOps ninja.
Yeah,
you know,
I remember like the transition from system administrator to system engineer in states where you're allowed to do that, right? Where you can use that term. I remember going through that in a position where we, you know, again, it was nothing wrong with it, but it was like you said, well, sysadmin seemed like the lower thing. And I was thinking, like, when you talked earlier, Mike, about this, like, hey, we put things that say you must have 10 years experience with Docker, and I'm like, I kind of feel like that's not really a new problem. You know, I remember, you know, jokes and, you know, seeing job posts in 2008 saying you must have 5 years experience with Windows 2008, and which those are especially hilarious because I'm like, oh my God, it's a year number. Like, even if you don't know versions, you should be able to figure that one out. And I think that's just a matter of...
Yeah, you don't have to be a dumb recruiter to even know that.
I don't know, in my experience, I started out as a sysadmin, and then as I grew my skill set, I moved away from sort of maintenance tasks we normally associate with system administration onto a system engineer role where I was now designing systems and designing things to scale. And I think that adding the label DevOps kind of throws it in to say, okay, well, you're doing some DevOps concepts like continuous integration, configuration management, all those sexy DevOps tools that we use on a daily basis that make our lives a lot easier. I think ultimately DevOps makes the job of being a system administrator a lot easier.
And I think you're right, John. I mean, like, I didn't want to sort of give this impression that, like, system engineer was just a nicer way to say sysadmin. That was actually part of the problem, is I think when you actually are a system engineer, you are doing a broader scale type of work than sysadmin. But to Mike's point, when sysadmin became like this, server janitor kind of job title, right? This maintenance title, that even though it's super essential, then it was like we have to come up with something new so that people will still want to do this kind of work. And applying, I still go to this, like, what does it mean to be, and we brought this up on, I kind of asked the DevOps subreddit about this, and it was a huge, it spurred a whole lot of controversy, or not controversy, just a lot of comments on a pretty quiet subreddit. So I'm pretty proud of that one. So there were a couple things that came up in that. There's actually one specific thing that I kind of like. So we're talking about this idea of ninjas and rock stars, right? So we talk, and I've been so guilty of this myself. I mean, I look back and I look at job postings that I created years ago, and I would say, like, are you, do you have rock star skills with whatever? Because you want to make it sound sexy. But someone with the Reddit user Linuxy Dave on our DevOps, he said, ninja and rockstar are code words for you will be one person doing the job of an 8-person team.
So, I mean, the whole rock stars and ninjas thing has been around for a while, and I think the rockstar thing originally applied to developers. You want to hire rockstar developers, right? Because you want them to be amazing. You want them to stand out and be rock stars. But then, if you think about that term, like, a rock star is a single person who stands in the spotlight, and then are typically supported by this whole group of other people. But if you're not there, if you don't have that support, then you're just a rock star with no band. Then, why do I want to hire just a rock star if I don't have a band for them to play with? Or if they excel at just stepping out into the spotlight on their own. I actually want somebody more along the lines of, like, a tenor in a choir, somebody who harmonizes well with everyone else, and who can augment and improve the team as a whole. So the whole, I want a rock star, it immediately conveys the wrong idea of I want somebody who is better than everyone else that I have. How does that make everyone else you have feel? It's, well, crap, they're not good enough. I want somebody better than all of you. That's a terrible spot to, like, put people in.
It seems
Absolutely.
Like you want a DevOps session musician more than you want a DevOps rock star.
Yeah.
You don't want a DevOps Axl Rose is really what it boils down to. So.
Yeah, it definitely gives the wrong connotation of, hiring that one, like, asshole on your team, which nobody wants to do, or the majority of us don't want to do. Also, gosh, what was I? Now I'm blanking on what I was going to say. But I just think that the team player thing in general, I know it's not, like, as sexy, but that is really what we're looking for on teams, and it's hard to find, for sure.
I mean, part of the... Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Okay. Well, I think DevOps ultimately is all about teamwork, because your developers and your operations team, they're working together. And then the rockstar is not someone who works together. I guess if you're a startup and you're looking for one guy to do everything, you do want that rockstar. But I think a lot of teams or recruiters that don't understand the sort of DevOps mentality of working as a team to deliver the best you can as a team are kind of losing the meaning there.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I was going to say, because Mike, you were talking about you don't want to hire someone better than everyone else. And I mean, I think there's a different way to look at it too, where a lot of people and a lot of teams, and I can't remember, someone from Google or something wrote an article about this, about always wanting your next hire to be one up from everyone else. And I think that's a definite, like, plus. So I just wanted to reiterate that, to bring maybe a tool or a skill set that the rest of the team doesn't have, but to be able to knowledge share and then in turn move everybody else up.
No, don't get me wrong, Jill. It's not that I don't think that that's a good idea. I think you should always hire and improve your team. It's the way you convey that to the rest of the team is, you guys are all now playing second string to Barry, who's going to be amazing and just going to, all the stuff that you guys have been. What's that?
You're all bass players.
You're all bass players. That's exactly it, right? So I think, yes, you should always try to hire the best people you can, and if they are better in some way, in some skill, in something, than some of the people you currently have, that's great. But I don't think that, saying, oh, this guy is a super ninja and he's going to save us, or this gal is a what is it, a sparkly DevOps princess unicorn, the +7 sword can win everything. Like I think that conveys the wrong idea.
Agreed. Plus all those buzzwords, ninja, rockstar. I was talking to my engineers at work the other day about it, and I mean it's just like so utterly lame that it's such a turnoff for most engineers if you're reading a job description to see that.
Yeah.
It's funny. So we were just I think last month I was visiting our old pals at 10th Magnitude, and I was talking to Shannon, who does a lot of the recruiting and stuff over there, and was talking about putting up an ad, just sort of like a banner ad that was about, we got into the conversation about ninjas and rock stars, and I kind of talked about this. Oh, and one of them was, so there was an ad, and it was actually going to be on the ADO site, and it talked about a rock star, and I'm like, you can't do that because we're about to have an episode where we completely make fun of that. And she's like, oh, and so we talked about it, and then kind of moved it around to that the ad is really not, and again, I'm going to get the exact verbiage wrong, but it's more like not hiring ninjas or rock stars or unicorns, just really good developers, And I was like, that's actually kind of an interesting way to brand that, which is to say, like, we are cognizant of the fact that all this stuff is kind of silly, and like Jill, like you said, it's become cliche, it's become kind of a different kind of a thing. So you can kind of, when you're sourcing, you can almost turn it on its head, and kind of wink at it, I think. And I'm not just saying that because it was my idea. I also think I wanted to talk about that in addition to, Mike, to what you said about what it says to the rest of the team, is I think that when an organization says we want rock stars, they're indicators of hero culture, right? Which is something that so Jennifer Davis has given a talk many times now called From Hero to Zero, and we'll put a link in the show notes to it, and it talks about this idea of that, and this is the thing that I think about in my career has always been, we think about being heroes. We think about, like, we want the people that save the day. I remember distinctly, like, kind of it was like a Microsoft poster that said, how does it feel to save the day every day? Not all heroes wear capes. And that's how we thought about doing this kind of work before. And I think that lends itself into both hero culture and into why we think that's how we're going to source people. And I think that's really potentially damaging. But I wonder, do you think that I guess who needs to get the message, right? Do you think candidates are still liking to hear this because it makes them feel like they're going to go do something, they really think they're going to go do something awesome? Or do you think it's just the message needs to get caught up, right, to the people that are writing these job descriptions?
So I think there's a couple different categories of job workplaces or positions that companies need to hire for that need different types of skill sets. If you're a 3 to 8 person startup and you're hiring your first person to cover your operations and your systems, you may very well want somebody who's got that kind of hero complex, who's willing to work 120 hours a week, who just lives for something to fail so that way they can jump in and save the day, because that's what your company needs at that moment, because you haven't had the time to bootstrap it with all of the resilience and operational knowledge that a growing company may need. But as a company grows, and you want to expand to a team, or you need the hero kind of vibe to be like, all right, we don't need a hero anymore, we need stable kind of operations, then you're looking for a different caliber of individual. So I think there's still a place for that kind of mentality, but there's also very much a time for it. If you've got a company of 200, 300 people, and you've got a 30-person operations team, and you've got a hero on that team, they're quickly going to be not as popular amongst their peers because of the way they exhibit, this heroism thing where they maybe won't build in the stability that they could. Maybe it's even subconscious, so that way an emergency happens that only they can solve. It's watch the talk. She goes into this a lot deeper. Jennifer goes into this a lot deeper than I can. But there's a time and place for heroism, and your company is going to have to make that kind of decision of, okay, we're over the firefighting hump. We need to actually produce viable, stable environments. And if this guy ever goes on vacation, then we got to be able to sustain that.
Absolutely. So let's we can have a couple little move into a little less serious topic for a little bit. Kind of thinking about kind of recruiter fail, and that's not to I don't really want to pick on recruiters because it's a really could be a really crappy job. I'm sure.
So, Jill, how many people do you reach out to in a given day?
Oh, not very many. So I am super particular about who I reach out to.
She has people to do that for her, Trevor.
Okay, no. But I mean, just to get a sense of just to get a sense of what recruiters are going through when you get some of these odd requests. Because you've already mentioned where sometimes you don't have control over the message you convey for titles and such. So,
well, I think it's different in a case like, and I'm not trying to, but like when I gave that, it was it was a contract recruiter. So they were working there was something they couldn't do. So actually, that's a good question. When you're part of the company like you are, Jill, right, where you're not just being paid to just go find somebody, how do you help kind of shape that?
Yeah, so we work with the teams to create our job postings as well, along with all of our messaging that we send out to candidates. That's all our own, and I found that for engineer hiring, it works best for me. So in a given week, we're hiring super heavily at DO for software engineers, mostly focusing on back-end like infrastructure stuff, but there are few and far between of those types of people, especially like we're working in Go, which is like, it's like, asking for Microsoft 2008, 5 years of experience shortly after. It just doesn't happen that much. But anyway, so our messaging is super particular. So in a given week, I might reach out to 15 to 20 engineers. They all get emails that are special to them because, every engineer is just their own special snowflake. And so my messaging is very particular just because I find that's what works best in the area. And gosh, everybody sees all the harshness that recruiters get on Twitter and on Tumblr and all that kind of stuff. But it is much easier when you're in-house. If you're an agency recruiter, it's all about numbers. And I mean, your day-to-day living depends on those numbers. So that's where those like mass emails come from because it's just a game at that point.
Do you find that targeting your recruitment letters get you a better return from the people you're reaching out to?
100%, yeah. So I will get a lot more. It doesn't necessarily mean that when they write back, they're like, oh yes, like DO is the place that I want to be, or Rackspace when I work there. But they're much more receptive to responding in general and being open and just like making that connection, which is all I really want to do in the long run, is to build out my network grader, which is I've kind of done on Twitter as well, just so that if and when your friend's friend is looking for a job, you'll think of a non-shitty recruiter to hand them off to.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, and kind of going to from a targeted perspective, as a person who, when I get something that I feel like is custom and not customized to the way of like you think about when people talk about like online dating profiles, right, where they might go through and they're like, I'm going to find a couple of the words so you can think I read your thing, but it's still my form letter that I send you. Like we know when we get those, right? But I'll have ones where they very specific. I can tell they were like, hey, you do this thing as chef, and I see you did this over at Apartments, and that's kind of cool. But then the one that kind of annoys me is my LinkedIn very specifically says, I'm sure your opportunity is amazing and your company is outstanding. I love my job. I guarantee I have zero interest in your opportunity. And then I went through this with one recently where obviously she had read my profile. It was a very targeted note. But then it was still this, and I wrote back and I said, what? And her response was, well, sometimes people put that up there so they can lay low for their existing employer, so it's always worth a shot. I'm like, that's actually kind of, I don't know. I thought it was kind of rude because I'm like, I don't know.
So Matt, how do you remove that from your profile?
How do I remove what?
Saying that you're very happy where you're at.
Oh, without anybody noticing, and all of a sudden Jeff will be like, wait a minute.
Now we all know Matt's tell.
That's right. That's true. But I wanted to think to Jill, when your response, though, is then I had the thing where recently I had a friend who was looking for a new opportunity, and he came to me and was like, hey, do you know anything? And I kind of went back and I looked through my emails and my messages, and I was like, here's some things I got, and from people who I was like, this sounds like a cool opportunity. And I was, to your point, I was very open to saying, like, hey, remember when you emailed me about this thing and I wasn't in for it, here's a person, So I think and there's recruiters that I've had relationships with for years that have never placed me in a job, and I have one that every 6 months I get a note, and she'll be like, hey, I'm hiring for this kind of position, and I don't really know what chef is, or I don't know what puppet or whatever. You got 5 minutes to jump on a call and help me out? I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'll do it because you've been polite to me and respectful. So I think it's useful to have that network.
Yeah, I think it's all about really knowing your audience, and some recruiters just don't take the time to do that. I mean, engineers are very particular. They're all they don't have strong opinions or anything like that. But
you get me. You totally get me.
But you want to know who you're interacting with, and so when all of these things come out about the wrong way for recruiters to do it, and yet recruiters keep doing it, it's a little bit frustrating on my end to see that, because it gives me a bad rap, and I don't want that.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think, like you said, it's also really easy to play, armchair recruiter, right? And be like, oh, well, this is clearly because again, and you talked about this too. You're like, people are different. Sometimes they want to be reached in different ways, and so I don't. While I get annoyed by kind of the blast, or get some of the ones that kind of really annoy me are the, hey, I have a contract to hire a position in Virginia for a help desk administrator, a help desk position. I'm like, come on, at least get close.
Well, at that point, isn't it basically just spam?
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what it is. They might as well be selling you Viagra at that point. It's unsolicited email. You didn't ask for it, and you've clearly stated that you aren't interested in this. I love the ones who will do the cursory lookup. They'll Google you really briefly, and then they'll send. I get this one at least once a month about, hey, Mike, I've looked at your GitHub. I have this super attractive Ruby on Rails front-end developer thing, and I'm like, all right, should I respond to this and waste my time, or should I just move on with my life? And I'm 9 times out of 10, I just move on, because it's like, you clearly haven't done the homework. I am not a Ruby on Rails front-end developer by any stretch of imagination. So...
Yeah, those are my favorite too, and a lot of my engineers and sysadmins will send me the funny emails they get from other recruiters, and sometimes if I have a couple minutes and I feel like getting a laugh, I'll send a cold email to my coworkers asking them if they want a Drupal job. So.
So on the other side of that, Jill, so what's the I don't want to say candidate fail, but where do you kind of see the other piece when people are, I think we've probably been in position, those of us who've hired people before, where, kind of, yeah, it's good to aim high, but sometimes you're like, whoa. But But where are some of the mistakes or some of the places when people are looking to people? It's the other side, like, because now we've been kind of a little arrogant on this show, like, oh, no recruiter should talk to us. I mean, we will talk to you, because we are the high, these immensely, valuable human beings, which, I mean, we are, but the truth is, I'm also sure everybody on this show at one point or another has been looking for a job. I mean, and I'm curious. So I want to talk about, and also
I actively don't seek jobs.
You don't actively seek jobs, Trevor?
No, I said I actively don't seek jobs.
You actively don't seek. I'm confused. So what?
Actively not seeking.
There you go. It'll fall in your lap. It's like love, Trevor. It will happen when you're not looking for it.
He keeps a web page open and then purposefully looks away while he scrolls through things.
So maybe telling the story in the case of what not to do, because that might be a little funnier. What are some of the things? What are some of the what not to do when you're looking to move into these types of DevOps type positions? And I'll leave that to, because I know, Mike, you hire around this, and Jill, obviously you're kind of in these roles. What would you say? I don't want to say advice, but.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting, like screening resumes, people who actively apply, because a resume has kind of become equivalent to how I think, and we were talking about job descriptions, is they're so like overarching and broad and buzzwordy, and it doesn't really tell me anything about you. So it's on, what I have to do is, of course, like do some Googling to find out like the real you, about your GitHub, about your Twitter, so that I can get a better understanding of you. But yeah, it's hard because resumes don't really convey that. But just to make sure that your resume isn't full of those buzzwords or full of those things that you've touched but you haven't actually dug into, or they were done on your team and you didn't really play a part, because those will be figured out, and then it just makes you look bad and feel weird.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I'd say be honest. Like Jill said, if you touched on a topic and you didn't learn it, don't put it on your resume. Like if you wrote 3 lines of Perl, I don't think you're qualified to put Perl as a skilled language on your resume. Like you don't know Perl.
I like to say on my resume things I'm familiar with. I'm familiar. I've seen it.
I've seen it. Yeah, because when I see that resume and I'm gonna see, oh, okay, that looks esoteric, that looks like something interesting, I'm going to ask you about it, and if you flounder around and don't know what you're talking about, that's going to come out really quick, and then that's going to immediately kind of like take that it's not even an interview at that point, that's a phone screen, and that's going to take a nosedive, and now we're just wasting each other's time. So just be honest about what you know, about what you want to do. Like Jill said, doing some background research on people is time consuming, but it's also, if you're not upfront about who you are on your resume, then we have to look, who are you? Because that's ultimately who you want to hire. Is you want to hire a person, not a list of, I know how to read Perl, I know how to debug a 3-par. Those aren't the things you want. You're hiring a person.
I mean, and
nice 3-par reference, by the way. That was on
the note of honesty as well, if you're going through a multi-part interview and in the first interview you say you don't know something explicitly, don't come back an hour later and pretend you're an expert for the next interviewer, because the interviewers do talk to each other.
Yeah, it's crazy. So we'll have feedback sessions afterwards, and you'll, with some people, get a different answer for every group, and people are like, wait a second, he didn't know that then, she knows it now, whatever. Yeah, that looks weird.
If I had a candidate, I've done interviews with various companies I've worked for over the years, but we had one candidate who put expert on the OSI model on their resume. And I was like, okay, well, what are the 7 layers of the OSI model? And they got 3 of them. And they were just shooting in the dark. They had no idea what they were talking about. It's like,
well, for a baseball player, that would have been pretty good.
3 out of 7?
Yeah.
I don't understand sports ball.
Okay. That's a pretty good batting average, but yeah.
But yeah, calling yourself an expert and not even being able to name the 7, much less in order,
is a simplified OSI model.
It's just an OS
leaving out the
model.
unimportant
Yeah,
parts.
just the I.
But also,
another thing too is how do you? I mean, it's hard too. Sometimes being I don't think I interview well. I stumble and I will on the spot forget things that I've done repeatedly. You know, there's that side of interviewing also. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes also into kind of like how you do interview. This could be a whole other thing. And I think about when I interview people, you know, again, I'm going to tech you, but I'm not going to tech you on stuff that I know you're going to store in the Google machine, right? You know, it's more of I think about like, do you understand it, right? So if I, you know, but again, to Josh's point, if you're going to say you know something, especially a thing like that, there is no like general way of knowing it, but you know, I would think about knowing every particular flag to a certain command. You know, that's not a thing, but I'm going to say like, what are some of the things you can do with that, or why would you do it? You know, and yeah, because the reality is, if you don't run it every single time, you're going to probably do /? And see what they are, right? You know, it's the XKCD, like, you know, this bomb can only be defused if you type the right flags to tar in the correct order, you know, the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're more about ID, because again, if it's just that you can like sort of spit stuff back, but it probably depends upon the position too, to a point. Yeah. I don't know, and I feel like developers, maybe it's a little different. Like, I've seen developer tests. I don't know, Trevor, have you kind of gone through those where they're like?
I've actually never had to take a developer test. I've done the whiteboarding stuff, and the thing I've learned about the whiteboarding sessions, and now that I've done some myself as well, is contrary to what I was expecting coming into my interviews. It's not actually about like putting the right answer on the board. It's all about how do you get to anywhere in those answers.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean,
you know, I remember going into those interviews and getting those questions and thinking like, oh God, you know, I don't remember the exact arguments for this method, and like thinking that was going to be the thing that fails me because I didn't memorize the MSDN library.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like Matt said, we could do a whole episode on how to interview for the operations style position. Like, it's very different from a developer-oriented position. Now, obviously, in this day and age, we expect everybody we hire to be able to have some coding ability, if only to read code and kind of like understand what it's doing, so that way they can, you know, find out where a problem may be and then, you know, triage from there. But a lot of it is just figuring out how people think in a new situation, because the way we execute things is we take whatever knowledge we have at the moment, we bootstrap from there and figure out the next thing. So, and a lot of it's trial and error, scientific method, but a lot of it is just, you know, how do you approach solving a problem? So, you know, any kind of interviewee should expect to have a bunch of problems thrown at them. One that I take into every interview is a problem that there is no right answer. I just want to keep throwing monkey wrenches into whatever solution the candidate has, just to see how they deal with another monkey wrench. There's no right answer, but, you know, let's see how you deal with adversity.
Your keyboard's gone. What do you do?
Exactly.
And I think that kind of tying that into the whole DevOps thing or whatever that's happening now is really smart businesses or organizations hire people with great critical thinking skills, great problem-solving skills, and that's like the core, because the tools and the languages and whatever will continue to change. And so you can't keep hiring for someone who's great at Chef or who's great with Go, because that's going to change in 3 months. So if they have the core competencies that you need and they're able to do those changes and solve problems, then that's going to be a really great hire.
I think it's a lot of DevOps is not necessarily just knowing things. because you need to know what you know, but you also have to have an awareness of the things that you don't know. You have to know what you don't know. And the thing that really scares me is the things I don't know, I don't know. But I think definitely being aware of things, potential solutions to problems you're going to be facing is more important than knowing all the flags to tar or knowing exactly how to grab a process PID and pipe it into a kill command that's going to restart the process and yada, yada, yada. Like there are certain nuts and bolts that don't matter. You just want to know what the overall machine's supposed to do and how to fix it when it breaks.
Yeah, huge interview pro tip. If you don't know something, admit you don't know it. Don't make it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think kind of this episode's gone by really, really fast. The one thing I wanted to think about too is, so we've talked about like the challenges. A lot of the stuff we've talked about are just generally the world of recruiting today. And some of the things don't seem like they've changed very much. They're not necessarily things about DevOps. So some of it's about what we call things, and some of those challenges around like the titling and things like that. But then I want to think a little bit about if we are treating DevOps as more than just an automation job, which in some places that's what it is, and great, whatever. But if we think about it truly as saying I want to hire somebody into an organization that embraces a DevOps culture, what are some of the things that, again, like Mike said, we could have an entire episode on interview techniques and things like that on both sides. I don't want to go too deep, but just thinking about like kind of broad strokes, how do you share that? Because that's a really hard thing, I think, to assess. Is culture fit? And I don't mean like, are we going to have a good time going and drinking beers together, and are we going to be buddies? But is the way that you want to work, the way that you work well, work with the way that this kind of culture change exists, or this type of culture within our company around our DevOps?
Are you asking for more buzzwords?
A lot, at least like 5 or 6 more.
Yeah.
Synergizing.
I said synergy.
Vertical.
I think it's hard to communicate that in a resume. Like, oh, well, I'm a problem solver. I'm a self-starter. I'm this. I'm that. Those tend to be more nebulous buzzwords that don't really help anyone get anywhere, except maybe make the interview a lot harsher because someone didn't like the buzzword you listed. Yeah. How do you do that? How do you convey, the DevOps mentality of problem solving and analytical thinking?
So I feel that that's something that'll come across in an interview if the interviewer is posing the right questions to suss those details out. I don't think there's any words on a piece of paper that's going to tell me that this person has those abilities. It's more about, let's talk to you, see how you respond, see how you deal with adversity, and then not only my opinion, but the opinion of other people who you may be working with. We try to interview around to the rest of the team, so that way, if everybody on the team has talked to this person and they're like, all right, yeah, thumbs up, then everybody's
right.
kind of committed.
But that's getting in the door. Once you have to get past that first smoke screen of the resume to even get to that part of the conversation. You can find, if I suck at writing my resume and I'm the best person in the world, you're never going to look at my resume. You're never going to talk to me and find out that I can answer all those questions and respond in all those situations. So
I think though, like to Josh's,
it's important to ask that question and of what do we put on a resume to try and at least convey the semblance of the idea, so that you're not just put in the out pile.
I think what you do is, to me, and again, thinking from reading resumes, to Josh's point, like listing qualities of yourself is just all bullshit. I'm like, whatever. I just care about what you did, and it's not so much because I care about that, but because that's what's going to express that thing. So I would look at stuff like if I was saying, okay, our culture is one where, we have, that we work, our operations folks work really closely with the development folks, and they help do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to look at what you did in your last job and see if you did that. And even because the thing is, if I know that's a culture, if that's a thing that I want, even if that's not exactly how it was, I'm going to probably try to find any bit of experience I had that shows that I want that, right? Like, I may work in the place that's the biggest silos in the world, and I'm like, I want to be like, fuck silos. I want to go be de-siloed. But what I want to do to express that is maybe just look for what is something I did in my current position or previous position that's an indicator, right? Like that's how I would look at it. Because anybody can say, oh, I have a strong work ethic. So, and with that, we need to wrap it up because we don't have Bridget on the show who will just let us talk forever and ever and ever. So we'll move into our checkouts. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is...
I do want to ask one question, though, before we
go ahead.
up. So, coming out of college, the resume advice that came with that was you need to have an objective statement on your resume that orally pleasures the company you're trying to work for. How do you guys feel about that as a concept? Or like Matt said, should we really just be dumping experience on there?
I want to see experience. I think one thing that's telling about a person, both their skill set and a little bit of their personality, is contributing to open source. Like, tell me what you've done in open source, and then I can go look at it and see you talking to people and what you've done, and I think that's a huge, huge plus for any resume.
That's a good point. I think even if you're not working with open source technologies, and if your company does, I've heard people give all the excuses. You should be able to at least do something silly, even if it's white space fixes, like, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, beyond just open source, I'd say one of the things that is super difficult is that in this field, we value experience, and you know, you're not going to get the experience of running 50,000 servers by running your college's, 20-server lab. So, experience coming out of college, that's super hard. So there's not a whole lot of, like, junior DevOps that have a lot of experience. There's typically, you want that kind of junior position because you want a foot in the door. So you've got your objective statement. I want to understand why you want to get into operations instead of, you were trained in computer science as a developer. Why do you want to do this other job, which, I mean, I kind of love, but many other people find very, not as fun. So it's what is the motivating factor there? So I guess it's like an objective or a mission statement of why do you want to do this, as opposed to anything else that you could be doing. Like that's kind of an interesting essay, if you will. I think another point, Trevor, of what to put on your resume, a lot of people build one resume and then, just like the recruiters, farm out the same email to all candidates. If you have a company in mind and you see a job position, tweak your resume for that position, right? Have 5 versions of your resume that will show off these particular abilities and experiences, so that way the person on the other side receiving that is going, oh, okay, you do kind of map what, your experience maps to what we're looking for. And it's not the cookie cutter resume that you've sent, to every other company.
Throw all the shit in the wall and see what sticks.
And when you do that, make sure that you send the right resume to the right company, because that's a huge candidate fail I see quite often, actually. I want to work at Google because I'm like, but I don't work for Google.
Yeah, to kind of echo that sentiment, I remember early in my career when I was looking at potential places to work, like, different places were heading different directions with the way they were managing the technology. So it was really important for me to look over my history and go, oh, well, I did a lot of continuous integration that I don't mention very much of. This company's headed in that direction. I should highlight everything I've done with continuous integration, configuration management, or anything that makes you more appealing to that job. On the note of like a objective or summary, I can't remember the last time I seriously wrote a summary or objective on trying to get a job. I think my most current summary says a DevOps rockstar 10x pirate ninja. Like, it's just 100% snark, because
that's why Josh is endorsed for sarcasm. So on that note, we're gonna wrap it up. So one thing before we go into the checkouts, I want to share with you, we have a registration code for ChefConf. ChefConf will be March 31st through April 2nd. You can go to chef.io/chefconf. The code ADO, like for Arrested DevOps, will get you 10% off of your registration. So let's go into our checkouts. Jill, what do you have for us?
So I am bringing a beer to the table, which I wish I had one in my apartment now. I'm a huge beer fanatic, so my favorite winter beer is Brooklyn Black Chocolate Stout, so repping New York City and stouts, which are my favorite style. And then to have a wonderful balance, I wanted to talk about New Year. I've been trying to exercise, and I've been doing these rowing classes here, and they're kicking my ass, but in a fantastic way. So, you know, have a couple stouts, go row the next day. It's a fantastic mix.
It's like work-life balance. It's beer-row balance. So.
Exactly.
Josh.
I wish I was talking about beer.
I was thinking about. I'm like amazed you don't have a beer pick.
Yeah, I'm actually endorsed for beer on LinkedIn, and anytime I hang out with Matt, I have to assess his beer situation and make recommendations because he's not a big beer guy.
No.
I wish I could get my hands on Brooklyn beer. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm not able to. But I do have access to the brewery, so they have a lot of really awesome funky beers. This went a completely different direction. I guess my checkouts, I wanted to mention Caustic Soda Podcast, but the more I thought about it today, the less I felt like recommending it because they talk about a lot of really horrible things. If you're curious about horribleness, like a Mythbusters for horribleness and grossness, then Caustic Soda Podcast is definitely for you. I do their system administration, so. Also technology related. I've started using or playing with InfluxDB, which is a time series database like Graphite. That doesn't take hours to set up, and it has a Graphite plugin, so you can just have your statsd Graphite backend set to the InfluxDB. I hope this makes sense to other people. But they're in an alpha right now. They're in 08.8, and they're doing a huge refactor for 0.90, which is going to have better clustering and stuff. It's something that's worth looking into if you've ever had to set up Graphite and wish there was something better. It has the potential to be a lot better. Other than that, I'm like I could talk for half an hour on beer, but
we'll have the DevOps beer episode. It will never end. Mike, what do you have?
Cool. So I got a couple checkouts. My first is OpSchool, opschool.org. It's an open source curriculum for learning operations. It's a ongoing project. I edit a lot of the content. It's a good place to go and check out, learn articles. It's not in kind of module or unit-based learning yet. We still need help with like content development and curriculum development, but it's definitely a great wealth of information. So check it out and contribute if you can. It's on GitHub, fully open source. The other one I'd like to call out is a book, 2 books. The first book is Tubes, A Journey to the Center of the Internet. It's a book by Andrew Blum. He talks about the origins of the networked computers, the Internet, and it's a really good read for both veterans to the Internet as well as newcomers. A lot of people who pick up computing today don't really know how it works. They just trust that it does. And the author kind of takes you on his journey where he goes around to kind of like find the physical locations of the Internet, this place that we all kind of assume exists but can't really see or touch unless you've been inside a data center before, and then you kind of know it's all just green blinky lights. The other book I'd like to reference is the No Asshole Rule to a Civilized Workplace. It's a good book which kind of talks about organizational culture and how to deal with kind of toxicity in the workplace, to recognize it and call it what it is. So all of those I hope will be linked in the show notes.
They will. That's how we do. So I have 2 quick ones. One is I've been using something called Elevate, which is a brain training app. There's some other ones I feel like I've played with these before, so I go between various ones. I think Luminosity is another one, but I've been liking Elevate, and it's kind of a daily set of mind exercises you do that are based around being able to do quick math or looking for patterns or things like that to theoretically stimulate your brain. I kind of like it, so you can find that at elevateapp.com. The other thing is in terms of not doing awesome rowing, because I need to start with just like moving more. So I'm doing the Fitbit thing again, and if you want to be Fitbit buddies, if you go to mattstratton.com/Fitbit, that will send you over to my Fitbit page. So we can be Fitbit buddies, and you can all walk a lot more steps than I do. I've also learned that when I give demos at a customer site, I hit my steps by the middle of the day because I pace so much. And Trevor, wrap us up.
All right. Well, it's been a few years now, but the Decemberists are back with a new album, What a Beautiful, Terrible World. That just came out today, and it's sitting in my record player waiting for me to end this podcast.
Do you actually have a turntable, Trevor?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's over there.
So hipster of you.
Wow.
I mean, can't you see his Argyle sweater?
It's a sweater vest, okay?
That's even worse.
It's just cold right here.
There's a video I need to put a link in here for. It's Microsoft was reviewing the pull requests and from the C# repository on GitHub, or from GitHub, which was just a really interesting video to hear them discuss the pieces and the requests people were trying to put into the repository. And just a kind of an odd pick, but walk around your neighborhood. This weekend, my girlfriend and I were walking. We decided to finally walk north from our latest apartment, and discovered a new spice shop and a new comic shop, and about 100 restaurants within like 3 blocks that we had no idea existed. So yeah, walk around
with your Fitbit. So. Reminder, we have a newsletter, arresteddevops.com/bananastand. We are actually starting to release our shows in conjunction with that. We've been sending them out, so actually sign up for it because there's more information about upcoming podcast episodes, interesting links about DevOps, and all that kind of fun stuff. That's at arresteddevops.com/bananastand.
Thanks again to our sponsors, VictorOps and Datadog. Please check them out at arresteddevops.com/VictorOps and arresteddevops.com/Datadog29. And thanks to our loyal listeners. If you enjoy Arrested DevOps, we'd appreciate it if you'd visit arresteddevops.com/iTunes and leave us a review in the iTunes store.
Be sure to check us out at arresteddevops.com or at arresteddevops on Twitter. We're always happy to get your input, ideas, problems with your life at shows@arresteddevops.com. I'm Matt at Matt Stratton.
And I'm Trevor at Trevor G. Hess.
We are Arrested DevOps, and remember, there's always DevOps
in the banana stand.